What's up, guys? It's your girl Camille, keeping it real, and you are watching The Real Camille.
Cool, sweet and dripping juicy. I die what I like, die natural is too. Fresh when I taste it, so I want a mango for Samantha, that mango for Vanessa, that mango for Missy, Chrissy, Britney, Crystal, and Kizzy.
So, a few days ago, I was talking to a friend, and they said to me, Camille, how you end up day? And that question struck me. I said, you know what? That sounds like that should be a title for an episode of The Real Camille. How you end up there? How did you end up there? They said to me, the person that I know you are, how I know you to be. Girl, how you end up there? I know how I got here. I know how I got into this world. I know where I come from. And when I mean I know where I come from, I know way back. I know all my family history for the most part. I know where I'm coming from and I know how I got to where I am now and where I want to be. To start my story, I came out of my mama just like everybody else, obviously, right? I know how my mom came to America and I know her whole labor and delivery and birthing experience of giving birth to me up here. But that would be her business and her story. My story starts from the moment that I entered into this world, and I'll share bits and pieces of my story with you. I was born in America for a purpose, on purpose. As my dad used to say, all you born here for no reason, no. All you born here for the benefit. Take advantage of the benefit. My parents being Grenadian and coming from a different lifestyle and a different culture to that of the Western world, they raised me and my siblings differently and they raised us based on what they know. And so they would always tell us, study your education, study your books, focus on school. My dad used to say, as a child, your only priority and your only responsibility in this life is your schoolwork. Your homework is your only responsibility. Be a child, study your book, stay in school, focus on your education. Everything else comes after. He used to say, you guys weren't born here for no reason. You understand? We didn't bring you guys into this world having to fight up for any benefits. We made sure that you guys were born here on purpose. Coming from immigrant parents, I have always kept that with me. I listened to my parents. I studied my schoolwork. I stayed in school. They were always like, no boys. I grew up very, very sheltered. No boys, hardly any friends. Well, with Caribbean parents, you can't really have much friends come over to your house and you can't go over to nobody else's house, okay? Unless their parents are from where your parents are from, you ain't going over to nobody's house. So I was raised with very strict Grenadian, Carriacouan, kayak parents. So my mom gave birth to us up here and brought us right back down to Grenada to live and be raised. However, the village where we come from, a town called Birch Grove, our family was not very well off. Well, as we like to say, poor people, children back home, right? I come from a poor family from Birch Grove, St. Andrew, Grenada. We were not well off. Grenada was very different to America. Due to certain circumstances, after some time, my parents made the decision that, you know what? We're going to bring these kids back to America. So after having went through the trouble, me and my sister, we are identical twins. So imagine having two babies, right? After having went through the trouble of doing everything that you had to do to pack up and ship everything down that you need to take care of these babies. And when I mean to tell you, they said they shipped everything, I mean, crib, everything that they need for the babies to uh, live down there. That is what was done. Put yourself in my parents' shoes if you are an immigrant or a migrant or whatever the case is. Put yourself in my parents' shoes. If you've been there, you've done it, you know what I'm talking about. Anyways, make a long story short, I ended up going to school in New York, where this is where I received my education. And throughout my childhood, I would return back home, visit my family. Growing up in New York was definitely very, very, very rough. It wasn't easy. I never liked it. I always used to just want to go back home to Grenada. I remember every time school was on vacation, I was crying with my mother every single year. Mommy, can we please go home? Can we go home? I don't want to be here anymore. And the place was just rough. I lived in what most would call the hood, okay? And I was just exposed to a lot of, gang culture. My block was a hot block of things just always happening. If it wasn't, hit and runs, drive-bys, whatever it was, it's just like every weekend something was always happening on my block, let alone whenever we would go over to this other neighborhood called Brownsville, where I had family living over there. It was even worse. And so I never felt safe. I never felt like I liked it here. And I just always wanted to go home. Um, and so I kept that with me throughout my childhood, always telling myself, you know, I'm only here because I have to go to school, because my parents said that I have to go to school here. And I can't wait until I finish school, because when I finish school, I'm leaving here. I'm leaving New York. I'm leaving America. I'm going back home. I don't want to be here. And so year after year, it was like, okay, it was like, when you're just counting down, okay, I finished sixth grade. How many more grades do I have to go until I get to go back home? That is how I lived my life. Um, I can remember at a very young age being that my mother was my first teacher. You know, I learned to speak from my mom. And if anyone, whoever knows my mom, you guys know how my mom talks. My mom does not shy away from her culture. She's not one of those West Indian people who come up here and try to change themselves and change the way that they speak and their whole demeanor and everything like that. My mom is raw. As some would say, maybe, when people call people fresh off the boat, my mom acts like she's fresh off the boat. It doesn't matter. She's been here for about 30 something years. Yeah, she's never left her culture alone. And my mom raised us as though, it almost felt like we were living in Grenada, in the middle of New York. Like our house was like little Grenada. America was outside those four walls. Inside my house, America didn't exist. And when I say America did not exist, I meant when it came to the TV, when it came to the music, when it came to all the influences around us, everything was strictly Grenadian, strictly kayak. I was not allowed to listen to rap music. I was not allowed to listen to hip hop music, because you can't listen to any music with any profanity or anything like that. No vulgar music. We strictly listened to calypso and reggae inside of the house. I was, definitely always had to follow my mom's rules. And so everything I learned from my mom. I learned to speak from my mom, all my mannerisms, everything I learned from my mom. I was living in a single parent household, and I live, breathe, eat, sleep, everything mommy, right? Okay, so obviously, as a baby, when I first start learning to speak, I'm learning to speak from my mom, learning all my pronunciations from my mom. And so, I had a very, very thick Grenadian accent, learning to speak from home. When I started public school, I spoke very, very differently to the other children at school. I'm at school in America and going to school with American children, and my accent was completely different to theirs. So obviously, I got bullied. Now, those times, me, being born in the late 90s, around these times now, there was this term called African booty scratcher, that if you were growing up in school in New York and Brooklyn especially, and you got called that, that was the worst thing like you could be called. And you would be deathly afraid of being called an African booty scratcher or a Haitian booty scratcher. And this dates back to Black people having a self-hatred for themselves for being Black. No one wanted to claim being from Africa. If you're a Caribbean, no one wanted to claim being from Haiti, because being Haitian was like the closest thing to African, right? So if you were called the African booty scratcher, or I don't even know why they put booty scratcher next to African and Haitian, but it basically was to basically say that you were dirty, right? Like white supremacy and racism in this world teaches us as black people that the color of our skin means that we are dirty, like the brown pigment means that we're dirty, and or that we smell, or that we need to bathe. This is the hatred that they instilled in us, you know. And so me now being exposed to public school, I was now learning that, and having a different accent to everyone else. You know, in kindergarten, people are asking me, "Are you from Africa?" And I was like, "No, I'm not." And my parents always trained me to say, whenever people would ask where we're from, we always say we're from Grenada. My parents never trained me to say I am American. So if it baffles some people, now that I'm an adult and you ask me where I'm from, I'm not trained or programmed to say I am American or I'm from America, because my parents never, and I mean, not just say my parents. I was raised by my mom specifically. I was raised by my single mother, and she never trained me to say I am American. You cannot turn to my mother and tell my mother that her children are American. She's going to tell you that her children and her family are from Grenada. Like I said, she, you know, is very, very like close and stuck to her culture. All right. So when asked where I was from, I would say Grenada, and people are like, "Where's that? Somewhere in Africa?" I remember when I was a child, there was this movie that came out called Madagascar. It's like, I think, African movie. I can't even really remember. And I even got asked, "Is Grenada next to Madagascar?" You know, but back then, no one really, Grenada is such a small place. It's like a little dot on the map. I remember arguing with kids in school, and they're like, "That's not a real place." And I'm like, "Yes, it is. Yaha, yeah, it is." And they're like, "Well, find it on the map, find it on the globe." And I remember I went on the teacher had a globe in the classroom, and I went on the globe looking for Grenada, and I couldn't, I couldn't find it. I actually ended up getting an atlas, a big book of the world maps. And it's like you have to go all the way to the pages where the Caribbean is, and where they would zoom in on smaller countries, and I was able to find a little dot that was supposed to represent Grenada. Obviously the map wasn't big enough for you to actually see the parishes, but it was this little thing right there. In the Caribbean is like you had the Grenadine Islands, and I was like, well, one of those little dots, one of those Grenadine Islands there, that's where Grenada is, right? So found myself always having to, defend myself that, like, I even though I was born here, I'm Grenadian, and people just didn't know what that was or where that was, or anyway, that's the past. But out of fear of being bullied in school, I now had to teach myself how to be American in order to fit in, so that I could get through the days of going to school. Because a little child waking up every single morning, anticipating and knowing that when you step through those school doors, everyone is going to alienate you. When you come home, you try to figure out how to prepare yourself to go to school the next day, to make sure that, you're not going to be treated how you were treated yesterday, because it really didn't make you like yourself. Okay. And so behind my mom's back, I started to listen to the radio. I don't really remember how this little small radio came into my possession, but back then it was like this little thing. I think it was called a Walkman. And it had a little dial, and you could plug headphones into it. And I got to twisting it and turning to different little stations, and I found the American music. I found it. I didn't understand everything that they were saying, but I picked up on yo, son, nigga. I picked up on those, and I started to listen to this every single day, to force myself to change my accent and change the way that I was speaking, so that I could fit in at school, so I won't be called an African booty scratcher. That is exactly what I did. Okay. And while in the process of trying to change the way that I speak and trying to change my accent, I developed social anxiety, because I was so afraid that when I opened my mouth, the wrong accent would come out and I would get teased. So I became very silent. I became very mute. I wouldn't speak much in class, and a lot of people don't know that about me. If you went to school with me and you're watching this and you're like, I went to school with that girl, I know that girl, you don't know me. You don't know me. You think you know me. You might know what I had presented, but trust me, you don't know me. People who know me, you know me if you live with me. How I talk at home, that's me. How I speak with my mom, and we speak raw. We speak where we come from, and that it was who I am. But when I was going to school now, I had to put on this persona so that I didn't feel like, a little child, you're going to school, you feel like, I don't want to go to school, I just want to die, or I don't want to be here anymore because these children are so brutal, the way that they're talking to me and the way that they're treating me. On top of that, my mom raised us with a lot of love. My sister and I, we grew up on home cooked food. And so when we started going to school and they start giving us this frozen food and this American nonsense that they were giving us, our palate was not accustomed to that. Our taste buds were like, hell no, this is not seasoned. This doesn't taste good. And so we refused to eat. And so my mom saw that we were losing weight going to school, not eating. And so she then said, you know what? I'm going to send my kids to school with home cooked meals. And I think out of our whole entire school, me and my sister were one of the very few children that were coming to school with home cooked meals and eating a different food to what the other kids were eating at school. And we were hated for that. We were bullied for that. We were chastised for that. People used to try to beat us up for our food because how dare we come to school eating curry chicken and rice and peas, with the steamed vegetables while they're sitting down here eating frozen pizza and sloppy Joe. Okay? So we were definitely teased and bullied all the time. We were envied. Some people actually probably just wanted to be our friends so that we could give them a piece of my mom's fried chicken that used to slap. But I mean to tell you, mommy fried chicken, slap. Anyways, y'all 235 kids know what I'm talking about, right? But that bullying was something serious, especially very detrimental to a child. It definitely brought down my self-esteem, and I had social anxiety, and I didn't make much friends. I just stayed very quiet. I didn't want anybody asking me, why do you say that word like that? Why are you saying comfortable and not comfortable? Why are you saying, why are you pronouncing stuff like that? I was just like, you know what? Let me shut my mouth. My dad said, go to school, study your work, and that is it. You ain't go to school to make no friends. You ain't go to school to this, that, that. So I was very quiet, and I always told myself, I'm just here to go to school so that when I finish school, I get to go back home. Kept that with me up until high school. And I remember um, the most exciting thing about graduating from high school, I wasn't excited to go to college because I was just like, I've been going to school my whole entire life, man. Just want to go home. I don't like it here. I'm tired of the from age 5, it's Haitian booty scratcher and then African booty scratcher. And then the police also make you hate yourself. Like almost all the black men in my family, I've seen them be harassed by police or beaten by the police. Like, it was just too much for me. I'm on top of people being shot in front of me all the time. By the time I was 10 years old, I've probably seen, how many people I've seen gunned down. Like, and why should a child have to even witness somebody pulling out a pistol and firing at someone and then seeing blood everywhere? Like, oh God, the childhood trauma that I have, you guys have no idea. But anyways, I was tired of seeing all of that, and I just wanted to go home. So the biggest thing for me when it came to graduating high school, and everybody else was like, oh, I'm going off to college, I want to go, and I was like, I don't want to be in America. Y'all go to college in America. America is going to eventually, I said, this thing, this black and white thing, for some reason is like, I don't know if it's something spiritual, but God always showed me that this thing is always gonna be, I don't even know how to explain it, right? But growing up learning Black history in school, when I look at the time my father was born and I'm learning about Martin Luther King, I'm like, this wasn't 200 years ago. This was just the other day. This was just, come on, you know. Barack Obama was our first Black president. I'm like, this is something, we're still going through this. And the thing that really upset me was how delusional my parents chose to be in teaching me certain things, because I remember them trying to condition me to believe that we didn't come from slaves. And again, I think that was a part of the self-hatred for being Black. My parents had me going to school saying delusional things like slavery happened in America. And me, my family, we're from the Caribbean. We didn't come from slaves. We're from Grenada. We didn't come from slaves. We don't. Mm-mm. Oh, yes, we did. Yeah, we did. And so, as an adult, I became very upset with my parents for conditioning me to believe that we did. Yes, we are children of slaves, right? But, anyways, that's neither here nor there. This thing with Black and white, I just saw that in my future, that by the time I graduated high school, I was like, this thing, it's not over. It's the fight is, it's still there. And now look at the day and age where we are now. It's 2025, and look at our president and look at the state of America. It's like I foresaw these things. God always was coming to me when I was sleeping and telling me, there's going to be a time where we have to go back home. There's going to be a time. Yeah, my parents came here. They gave birth to me here. They brought me back home. And then they were like, okay, we're going back up there. And then they brought me back home again. And, but I said, let me tell you something. There's going to be a time. I always was like, I'm going back home. You understand? So, I never had a desire to go to college. So upon graduation from high school, I end up going back home. That was my graduation treat. I was like, school is over. Oh my God, finally. And I go back home. That is where the start of another journey began. And that I'm gonna leave a cliffhanger here. This is going to be the end of episode 1. They asked me, how did you end up there, Camille? How you end up there? How did you end up there? This concludes episode 1. You will see part 2 in another video. Unfortunately, this studio that I'm in, it's a very noisy, a whole bunch of noise going on, outside noises. The next episode, I doubt I would film here. I would have to film it somewhere else. But I hope you guys enjoyed this first episode. I will see you guys in episode 2. It's your girl Camille, keeping it real, and you are watching The Real Camille.